Hey everybody, this is herculespetix, founder, curator, docent, and gift shop employee of the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies. Tonight we're going to look at Asterios Polyp by David Mazzucchelli. This is David Mazzucchelli's first graphic novel after, many decades of creating comics art. He finally in 2009 made this graphic novel, and it's really good. It's not like the guy didn't have practice, he's done hundreds of great pages of comic art over the, past 30 years, I imagine. Probably about 30 years. I guess now it's pushing on 40 years. But back then, I guess it was only 20 years. So this is a really interesting book. Came out from Pantheon. Look at this weird dust jacket. I didn't cut it. It's supposed to be like this. I don't know why. But the graphic design is amazing. That's an amazing logo. It's almost like 3D. And let's take off the back. Let's see it continue. Really nice dust jacket. Very well designed, but I wish it was full size. The book itself does have these, what do you call that? It's actually carved in the book. It's, I can't think of the name right now. 2 different drawings, front and back. Hope you can see it on the camera. So guys, I have to apologize first off. There's a little traffic noise outside. I live right in a busy intersection, and I can't close the windows. It's fucking hot as hell. And, it's almost 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm stripped down to my boxers, and I'm still very uncomfortably hot. So if I close those windows, I'd be dead. So hopefully you'll be able to hear me. Nice little end papers here. And here we have the title page. Pretty much just like the cover. The dust jacket, I should say. I'm just going to let these images wash over you. They're pretty self-explanatory. God, I love this. This is the apartment of Asterios Polyp. He's a bachelor at this point in his life. As you can tell by the mess, he has all these overdraft notices, past due bills. It looks like he hasn't been living his best life. And here we see him. I love this character design. So interesting. He's sitting in his apartment watching porn. And all of a sudden, a lightning bolt hits the apartment building. I love this harsh relief here. The black and white. That sound effect's pretty damn nice, too. Fire alarm starts going off. Turns out his apartment building caught fire from the lightning bolt. He rushes to get out of the building. And we see what he grabs. And these are all going to be very important things. He grabs this lighter. He grabs a watch, and even though he could die at any second, he's really desperately looking for the Swiss Army knife. Obviously, these things mean a lot to him. And I think did I miss something here? Nope, not yet. He runs down. Everyone in the apartment building looks like they got out safely. Sorry, I just wanted to comment. I love this page with all this negative space. Him coming out of the doorway, and then silhouettes of him running down the stairs. It's just really nice. Interesting palette, too, like limited colors throughout. We see this very interesting thing. While his apartment is totally burning up, all of his possessions, he has a special room full of videotapes, all dated every single day, and they're all going up in flames. We'll find out what that means later. So this is Asterios Polyp. Get a little introduction to the man here. And it turns out he's a famous architect. He's what you call a paper architect. Not one of his buildings has ever been made, but his plans for buildings are revered. His genius. I love that idea in architecture. You could be this revered architect and nobody's ever made your buildings, your plans. It's like being a great musician and no one's ever performed your music. So he's in academia. He teaches up in Ithaca, upstate New York. But he lives in Manhattan. That's where his apartment was that got burned. They got torched. Love this little abstraction here. He's won many awards and stuff, written books that are revered, totally taught in architecture school. We see him here going back in time. Always a really smart guy. Here he's in high school. All the students are asleep while he lectures about architecture. We see him as a little boy. He read every book in the house, committed them to memory. Has a great memory. That's part of why he's so smart. His father was a doctor, emigrated here from Greece, and there's his father and mother, their wedding picture. So he actually, when he was born, he had a twin, but the twin died. And the twin would have been called Ignazio. That's me. So this whole time, this narrator, we find out that the narrator of this whole book is Asterios' dead twin. So we see Asterios wandering around, just like living on the street, it looks like. And I love this. We see this little dotted figure. I think that's supposed to be Ignazio. Almost like his ghost following him around, shadowing his every move. Another great page. Him descending into the subway. Just the way this is designed. Really nice. He's so broke he sneaks into the subway under the turnstiles. Really great cartooning in this. As he's walking through New York City, he sees all this stuff. We realize that he's not, he's a pretty decent guy. He sees this woman puking, he tries to help her, and she's just like, go away, go away. And he reaches into his wallet, takes the last of his money, and goes to the Greyhound station, says, how far would this take me? Obviously, Asterios is, he's just done. He's gonna start a whole new life. So this is going to be very important for the whole graphic novel. He gets into this little philosophical conversation. What is reality as perceived? We're simply an extension of the self. Wouldn't that color the way each individual experiences the world? And we see this is what he's trying to show here artistically, that everyone sees things differently. So maybe, I see a woman as what I think is, photorealistic, I guess. But maybe people see a woman like this, or in this style, or like this. Who knows? And maybe that's why some people just get along great, because they're similar. See how they're drawn similar? But others don't. And I love this here. Just two examples of completely different art styles. Both of which are really great. People keep trying though. And I just love this aspect of the book, how it gives David Mazzucchelli an excuse to just draw all these amazing abstracted people, because supposedly that's how some people are seeing them. So basically the Ignazio, once again, this is Ignazio talking. He posits that maybe one person's construction of the world could influence someone else's. Here's Asterios teaching, and like all of his students are like different styles. It's kind of interesting though. Some of them are very all the same. Maybe that's like I don't know actually. I don't have a theory. I was trying to think I had one, but I don't. We see him dealing with the students. He's very short with them and kind of a snobby, know-it-all. I mean, he does seem to be very intelligent, but he just mocks the students. So now he's reminiscing about, I guess he had this affair with a student. He actually tried to fight it. He was like, oh, this would be inappropriate. But of course, she's really beautiful, and he gives in. And he starts a relationship with her. We see her crying, though. You're a big friggin' jerk, so obviously, Asterios Polyp maybe isn't the best boyfriend, And then we see a stream of student girlfriends. Here's your coffee, Professor. So Ignazio continues to postulate this idea. This would suggest it's possible for someone to freely alter his own perception of reality in order to overlap with another. And what he's talking about, I think, is, when you fall in love with someone and you start being with them, it totally changes your outlook on life. Well, a lot of times it does. And that's why we see a little flash forward there. I didn't point it out, but we'll get to it later. We got a lot of pages to go through here. We see Asterios dreaming. Ignacio's in a hospital bed, and he says, got a cigarette? And he wakes up on this Greyhound bus, and this derelict guy is saying, got a cigarette? And Asterios shows off his lighter to the guy. Some really nice just landscape shots of America through the Greyhound bus window. And I guess this was Asterios Polyp's father's lighter. That's why he rescued it from the fire. But he just gives it to this old dude. And the bus driver announces Apogee. We're stopped at Apogee. And Asterios says, this is my stop. He walks to an auto repair shop and gets a job. He lies and says that he's worked as a mechanic before. And he says, hey, is that okay, though? I'm sorry, before I get into that, he also basically gets a room. This auto mechanic, he says, oh, yeah, we have a room to let in our house. His name's Stiff Major. I love this guy. I love his character design. He's a great character. And basically he says, is it okay if I come back in 2 hours or an hour or so I can get something to eat? And then I'm ready to work, boss. So he walks right past the diner and his stomach's growling, goes right to the library, and we see him in 1 hour just devouring these auto repair books. That's how smart he is. He's got just a perfect memory. So he's basically, in an hour, he's going to kind of teach himself auto mechanics and basically be able to fake it. Be good enough to fake it. So we see Asterios back in his prime, 1984. He's at a faculty party, and he's just showing off. He's being a bon vivant, saying all these clever things. Everyone's circling around him like, oh, what a clever guy. And this is when he meets Hana. And Hana is going to be very important in his life. Her name means flower in Japanese. I think that's why the end papers had all those flowers. A lot of the things in this book connect. And these are like callbacks and Just little touchstones where it's like, oh yeah, because they said that earlier. And Hana basically reveals her past. Her father was a German American stationed in Tokyo in 48. Met the mother. And they had 4 brothers pretty quickly. 4 sons, I should say. And then 6 years later, they had Hana. So she was very, kind of the afterthought child. She grew up very kind of lonely. Her older brothers, were too old. They didn't want to hang out with her. And her parents, it looks like they pretty much neglected her. Every time, she was a very smart little girl. And just always getting A's, getting first prizes. And they just were like, oh, that's nice. Who cares? Here we see little sad Hana. It looks like she's a genius, though. Apparently, everything she does, and she's an artist, everyone's blown away by her work, but she's constantly hobbled by self-criticism and doesn't think she's good enough and doesn't try out for things because she's like, oh, I'm not good enough. I shouldn't even try. She's the only one who doesn't see how talented she is. She's the valedictorian of her college, and she doesn't even get up to do the speech because she's so shy. Really love this character of Hana. Once again, we see outside the spotlight. This is going to be a motif that returns. So here, once again, we see that other motif of how everyone sees everyone differently. I love this. This is like something Jack Kirby would do, I think. I would love to see this idea illustrated by Kirby. And this is how, I guess, maybe Asterios sees her, I assume. And this is how she sees him. I love this design of this abstracted Asterios. And we see them meeting. And she says she felt she was staring straight into the spotlight. Because she recognizes him as a very charming, brilliant man who constantly has people hovering around him. And almost like a moth to a flame, she's intrigued by it. Now we're back to the present. We see Asterios is going to see his new quarters, his new lodgings for the first time. I love this house, just all the little bric-a-brac and design. It's definitely unique, We meet his little kid. He's called Running Dog. I guess his real name's Jackson, but everyone calls him Running Dog. And at first, the wife's really pissed off. She's like, you rented out this room without asking me? But eventually, he smooths it over. They go to this local diner, and he meets Manana. She's a waitress, cook and waitress there. And we meet this guy named Spotty Drizzle. Everyone in this book has pretty odd names. Almost ridiculously odd names that nobody in real life would have. And I guess he's like a meteor watcher. And he's constantly just telling everyone about the big one could hit. Nobody's watching the skies. I'm the only one doing it. And everyone kind of thinks he's a crank. Kind of a, crazy guy. Everyone's faces has such interesting designs, completely different. Look at Manana's face. Really nice. And so this part's interesting. It's kind of talking about Aristophanes in Plato's Symposium. And Aristophanes is in that book. And basically his theory was that men and women were there were no men and women. Humans were basically these barrel-shaped things with 2 arms and 2 legs and 2 faces on either side of their head. If any of you guys are familiar with Hedwig and the Angry Inch, The Origin of Love, a beautiful song. This is all taken from this. And basically, the humans were full of hubris, so the gods split them in two with a lightning bolt. And from then on, there was men and women. And that's why we constantly fall in love, want to have sex. We're trying to get back together with our other half. We see Asterios in various sexual encounters throughout the 70s and 80s. So it says, this is more succinct. Men and women have been running around in a panic, searching for their lost counterparts in a desire to be whole again. So basically, that's why so many humans are rudderless. None of us feel whole, because we're not, according to Aristophanes. Now we see him with Hana. And this is when they're first hanging out. And they definitely have a connection, even though they're complete opposites. We see some of Hana's art. Looks kind of interesting. I bet David Mazzucchelli had a fun time making up these weird sculptures. And we were introduced to her cat, Noguchi. They were married in the spring of 1986. And Hana's looking through the sand, and she finds a Swiss Army knife, perfectly workable. And basically, Asterios kind of takes it. Right? I mean, she gives it to him once again. So now we find out why he rescued that Swiss Army knife. A lot of sentimental value to it, because Hana gave it to him. And it looks like Hana's the love of his life. So Hana comes down from Ithaca in 1985. So now we're jumping back for the marriage. And they basically have a date. He cooks for her. Asterios really likes to cook for the same reason he loves architecture. Taking something that's utilitarian, but making it special. Another dream of Asterios. He's a two-headed monster. Well, two-headed human with his brother Ignacio. And he wakes up, and little running dog is pestering him, kind of. And he finally meets Ursula Major, Stiff's wife. And she's quite the character. Just the way he draws her. She calls herself a goddess. But David Mazzucchelli really sells it with her design. She does seem larger than life. She's very into like mystical stuff. And even though she was mad at Stiff for renting the room to him without asking, she seems like she's warmed up to Asterios pretty quickly. She's a pretty nice lady. So now we're introduced to God damn it, I forgot her name. Oh, Mañana's boyfriend, Geronimo Pink. And he's this total commie. He's this small-town communist who's is a great mechanic. He used to work for Stiff, but then quit just out of principle. He's like, I can't be part of that exploitative capitalist system anymore. So he just gets by doing freelance stuff every now and then. He's trying to start a band with Mañana. And he's talking about his plans. And he was the one who named little Jackson a running dog. You know, like the old running dog of capitalism. I think Mao said that, used that term. And I love this. He says, yeah, Ursula thinks it's an Indian name. So it really looks like, even though like Ursula's kind of an intellectual, at least, on that kind of like spiritual level. She knows a lot about spirituality and, she's philosophical. She thinks about, heavy things. Stiff is the total opposite. Stiff is just this probably Republican guy, just a nice dude who isn't very bright. And he's constantly butchering the English language, using malapropisms all the time without even realizing. This is how weird Ursula is. She basically found out his horoscope and made his room, designed his room due to his horoscope. Like the table's upside down. It's really silly. His chair's at its side and she's like, please don't rearrange anything. It could screw up the energy in this room. God, Ursula reminds me of early 70s animation, late 60s, early 70s animation. Just, you don't see anything like this in comics. It's kind of cartooning. And she almost looks like she's in a different world than anyone around her. The way she's drawn, which I think is on purpose, because she is this unique woman. This is a pretty crazy page. Just talking about Asterios. He's always liked abstractions, metaphors. And basically this chapter is about his philosophy about architecture and, of course, other things. Sometimes he'll be in awe of just a shoe he finds at the mall. I'll just be like, this shoe perfectly expresses the essence of shoeness. Nothing extraneous. Also, Hana's design is so amazing. I mean, it's so like manga influenced. Even though she's Chinese, half Chinese. Oh no, wait, she's half Japanese. I'm sorry. It's late at night, guys. Sorry, I'm getting a little loogie. Here's some of Asterios' paper architecture. We see the relationship between Asterios and Hana after they're married. And I love how this is so interesting to me. Look how they're basically on the same plane. They're drawn in relatively the same style. It's not like that earlier chapter where everyone looks totally different, has a different like drawn style. But they get in this argument. And I'm sorry, this is when they first start dating. They have this huge argument, and all of a sudden, there's a rift between them, as shown by how, look, they're completely different styles now. I thought that was really interesting. Also, I just love the way he draws Hana in this weird style. So basically, Asterios admits to her that he's videotaped himself his whole life. He set up cameras in all of his rooms. That's why she slapped him in the past page, because he's like, oh yeah, I'm videotaping us. And she's just like, she doesn't realize it's not because he's some perv. It's just something he's done. He never watches the tapes. He finds it comforting to know they're there in the next room, his own video doppelganger. And then watch, as Hana comes to realize, okay, I can live with that. She, is back on his plane, or maybe he's back on her plane, and they can be, they're simpatico again. Pretty interesting idea for comics. Something I don't think movies could ever do. I guess they could. Who knows, but it would be kind of weird and clunky. So it looks like Asterios is really fitting in around this household. He's cooking him breakfast and stuff, and Ursula is talking politics, talking sociology, and Stiff is just like, Ursula, would you leave it? You're always looking for an excuse to shit on America. But I love this, how different they are. Completely polar opposites intellectually. But there's no doubt that they're just crazy about each other. They're totally in love with each other. So one day he's hanging out with Ursula. And talking some more politics and stuff. She's a great character, Ursula. She's a really unique character in fiction. So I think this is when they're married now. And Hana tells Asterios about a dream she had the night before where I think it's him smothering her with a pillow. And they're basically visiting Asterios' parents. His parents are very old. I guess his father's really in a bad way. He's pretty much been at death's door for years. He's just been kind of a vegetable. And it's lasted for years. Now we flash back to when Asterios first sees her sculptures. He's very impressed with her talent. I love this, how he tells her how much he likes her sculptures, and we see the spotlight on her, and she looks like she's very proud. Like, someone notices my talent. But then he just keeps commenting on them. You know, being like a little pontificating know-it-all. And look, the spotlight leaves her and goes on Asterios. And that's what he loves to do in life. He always wants the spotlight on him. And Hana's just like, she could feel it. She's just like, oh, well, okay, that's an interesting theory, but I wasn't really trying to do that. And he's just going off. Just like, oh, I can see what you did here. Shmata, shmata. And this is pretty intense. The mother kind of admits to Asterios and Hana's there as well. She basically just says, you know, every day I pray that he dies. And of course I feel terrible. But he's just a vegetable. I got to take care of him every day. He's not the man I married, you know. I mean, people feel like that, you know. There's a certain point where you're just like, it would be better for everyone, including the person, if they just died. And then, of course, you feel terrible about it. Of course, Asterios has to put it into this diagram. He's trying to make sense of it all. The dialogue between Hana and Asterios is just great. Really clever sometimes. They just are both really smart people. So they just joke around with each other. And sometimes it's really good. Sorry, it's a huge book. I can't really read everything. So now Hana's moving in with Asterios in this scene. And she basically just brings one kind of piece of furniture that's not like his modern architecture furniture. And, you know, he realizes it's like, it kind of fits. Just like their relationship. And, you know, Asterios at one point talks about how that's when you know, like, a great relationship is when your two lives intertwine just easily. It's just, you don't have to work at it. Your just lives become intertwined and it's just all good. And definitely he seems to have that with Hana. So now we see Manana and God damn it, I forgot his name already. The commie, and their band is coming together. The Radnicks. They've already got stickers, but they still don't have a gig. And then Stiff shows Asterios his solar car. He wants to build a solar car because, he's just like, yeah, sometimes you can't get gas. Maybe he remembers the gas crises of the 70s, but he's not smart enough to really make it work that great. He also put it on this giant heavy caddy from the 70s. So instead of putting it on a nice little car, a little compact car, so it's just going to be harder to make it move. Once again, we see Asterios just seems to not even care about material possessions anymore. He gives Running Dog his watch. And this watch is special to him. It was the first watch he ever owned. He saved his allowance for 2 years to buy it. So it meant a lot to him, and he just gives it to the kid. Doesn't seem to care at all. So definitely that fire almost like cleansed Asterios, or I don't know, burnt out all the bullshit in his life. And so here we see Ursula and Running Dog and Asterios. They're going on a picnic. They see this giant crater. The conversations between Ursula and Asterios are really interesting. They're also two very different people. She believes in astrology and stuff, and Asterios is very logical and, probably an atheist, I imagine. And they always get in these little debates, these friendly debates. So now we have a new character into the story. In the fall of 1991, Willie Ilium rolled onto campus. And a very self-important man. He claims that he came there to deliver a lecture, but nobody could remember having invited him. So I don't know. This guy could, it's just kind of this wheezy little guy who just insinuates himself into places. And he basically introduces himself to Asterios and Hana because he's heard of Hana and he really wants her to design his next ballet. Turns out he's a choreographer. We see some of his great shows. I mean, he's very well known. And man, he's just a pompous ass, like the definition of a overblown pompous ass. Yeah, everything he says is kind of weirdly inappropriate, though. And as the story continues, he definitely talks inappropriately to Hana all the time. I guess because he's so non-threatening, it's not so bad. Because look at this guy. He's a fucking troll, So Hana accepts the job. She dives into it. She's really excited about it. She has to make weekend trips to go to New York to visit Willie. And of course they have to hang out with Willie a lot, which is kind of annoying because he's such a pud. So once again, just saying all this really inappropriate stuff. And for some reason, Asterios doesn't say anything. He doesn't say, hey, you can't talk to my wife like that. And so it gets worse and worse. Well, from Asterios' point of view, Hana seems to always be away. He stays up late at night worrying about her, calling her at 3 a.m, like a jealous husband, wondering what she's doing. And obviously, I mean, this guy's pretty hateable in the first place, Willie. But of course, Asterios is really just getting fed up with this guy. We see one of the rehearsals for the ballet. He's a very hard taskmaster. Also, I think it's interesting, just like how Asterios is a paper architect, he's a choreographer who doesn't know how to dance. He's never danced in his life. But he's a well-renowned choreographer just because he has ideas, I guess. Another dream. You can always tell the dreams, obviously. You probably noticed by this very bright yellow palette. And he's visiting Asterios Polyp, architect, the office of Ignacio, in this dream. And it pretty much sounds like Ignacio has lived his life. But even better, he's even more renowned in this dream reality. So he wakes up. Stiff has all this great wood he found. So he says, hey, you're going to help me. We're going to build a treehouse for the kid. And it looks like Asterios really gets into it. And basically says, this is the first thing I've ever built. You know, he's an architect for decades. He's never built anything. Another beautifully designed page here. I just love the little panels all around this. I mean, pretty much every page is pretty damn nice in this. I haven't pointed out every page because, like I said, I think this thing's over 300 pages. This is going to be a long video, guys. Sorry. But I want to show off all of it. And once again, like, just trust me, I'm just glossing over all the points in this book. It's way more substantial than, my little observations are making it seem. It's just talks about so many different things. It really is kind of like a magnum opus type graphic novel where David Mazzucchelli is really, I imagine this took him a long time to write, let alone draw, because it's really well thought out. We see Hana at her classes teaching art students. We also see from their dialogue that, Hana knows exactly what Asterios is like. She knows he's pretty much, kind of a self-centered, kind of a jerk. But she still loves him, and she almost finds it charming. I love this page here. I love this clutter in this room. Kind of reminds me of like Juice Swartha or something. One of all those great Finnish cartoonists. Or Finnish? I don't know. The blonde people. She's from Amsterdam? I don't know. I always mix up those blonde countries. But whatever. It's really a great page. I was just looking at this for like a minute or two last night when I was reading this. I was like, oh, wow, look at all this stuff. So basically now we meet the composer of the ballet. His name's Calvin Kohotek. And he's another kind of a genius, this living legend. And Hana is pretty fascinated by him. And then all of a sudden, Asterios, who pretty much knows nothing about music, he starts getting into this little kind of debate with him, with Calvin. I like this how Calvin says, in a cacophony of information, each listener, by focusing on certain tones and phrases, can become an active participant in creating a unique polyphonic experience. And David Mazzucchelli shows it to us. Everyone all of a sudden is in their own little panels, all experiencing like a different chunk of reality. He does so many like great formalistic things like that in this graphic novel, and unfortunately, I haven't pointed them all out, and I'm not going to. But trust me, it's a pretty rewarding read. And so basically Asterios is kind of criticizing his whole his ideas about music, this great musician. And Hana is kind of pissed off by it. And when they get home after the visit, she gets in an argument with him. And look, once again, they're not on the same plane anymore. They're at odds with each other. And she says, "What makes you think you're always right? Suddenly you're an expert on music? Do you think maybe it's possible that Calvin knows more about it than you do?" And when she says, "What makes you think you're always right?" I like this too. This is an interesting thing here. We see, "That's not true, and you know it. It so happens I often am." And we see X's through them. You know, like when you're in an argument, some things run through your head and you're like, "Oh, I can't say that." That's not gonna go over well. So that's how David Mazzucchelli does it. This is Asterios in his head, his responses, but he decides to just say, "Is it okay if I answer one question at a time?" Once again, I love this, the way he draws Hana in this abstract style, and Asterios. So she's kind of pissed off at him. I mean, she always holds it in. She doesn't comment on what a pompous ass he is all the time. But she's had it. Because she's the opposite. She's kind of defending herself in her argument. She says, "You hear words, but you don't know how to listen. Just because somebody's quiet doesn't mean he doesn't have an opinion. Maybe all that person wants is a little recognition." And Asterios says, "Wait a minute, who are you talking about?" He has enough self-awareness or awareness of others that he gets that, oh, she's probably talking about herself now. She's not talking about the musician anymore. And then she breaks down and cries. And I love this here. She says, "Why do you always let him talk to me like that?" So even though she was angry about this whole other thing, a lot of it is just because this guy, Willie, the way he constantly is pretty disgusting with her, the way he talks to her. And Asterios never says a damn thing. And he's got no answer. The answer is probably because he's a self-centered prick. Really interesting formalistic stuff going on here. Just floating in space. I have a blister on my foot. But it's now when he's in the House of Stiff. And then once again, floating in space. I have a blister on my foot. But he's back when he's married to Hana. And of course, she takes care of him. This sequence is kind of interesting. I'm kind of not sure what it's trying to convey. We see Hana basically just doing very mundane tasks. Kind of a toilet stuff. Not toilet, like a toilet bowl, but, like clipping her nails, Q-tipping her ears, flossing. And there's a central panel, this little mini, not much of a story, but she gets one of those cheap Q-tips, the cotton swab falls off in her ear, and she's freaking out. She's like, "Get it out, get it out." But then all around, we just see these random pictures of, and I think what the point is to show that, like, as you're married, people are human. It's like we see her farting, we see her blowing her nose, popping zits. And maybe this is to show that, like, oh yeah, the honeymoon's over. Kind of interesting. So Asterios, in the central strip, Asterios gets the cotton ball out. And now we see once again him floating in space, putting a Band-Aid on his foot. This is like a totally different style here. It's basically, I think this is the Orpheus story, where Asterios is descending into hell. We see Cerberus. And it looks like hell's a subway. The entrance to hell. Love this page. That's really nice stuff. He's got a lyre, but it's kind of an architectural ruler type thing. Gets on this floating subway car. It's traveling through this channel of water. Descends even further on this escalator. And it looks like he's in hell. We see all these denizens, you know, being tortured. They don't look very happy. Weird imagery here. And he finds himself at this theater, and it's almost like a Greek play, like a Greek mystery play. Willie's there. William. It's almost like they're dancing together, or at least mimicking each other's moves. Hana arrives. And he leads her out of Hades. And I think this is the story. Maybe it's not Orpheus, but it's that famous story. It's almost like the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, where they're all like, oh, you basically freed your loved one from hell. But if you look back before you get to the surface and look at her, it's all for naught, and she'll have to stay in hell. I can't remember who that is. Orpheus, someone else, I don't know. And so he's trying not to look at Hana. And it looks like Hannah's withering because he won't look at her. She's trying to get his attention. And she's withering. And look at this. This is really weird and kind of creepy, these three panels. And finally, her hand lets go of Asterios' hand. And he has to look back. He finally does, and he sees her. And of course, she is re-condemned to hell. Just like that old Greek myth. So finally, the Radniks, was that their name? I can't remember their stupid band name. Finally, they have a gig, and everyone shows up to support him. Asterios and Stiff. Ursula can't make it, though. There's this other band, Celtic Skelter. Pretty funny name. Bunch of goth chicks. And he's, we get to see some of his lyrics, his lefty lyrics. The Radniks. I think I said that, right? And it's just like kind of a nice little scene. I mean, nothing that important, but pretty much just like nice dialogue between all the characters, nice interaction. And then for some reason, well, it's inexplicable, like this sometimes happens at a bar, some crazy drunk is basically behind Asterios Polyp, harassing him. And then he just smashes Asterios with a bottle. And it looks like it is. I'm pretty sure it's the guy from the bus. He even has the lighter that Asterios gave him. Very strange. And Asterios is thinking about God and religion. Checking if I missed a page. Sometimes these stick together. I think I got it. Just a lot of great pages here. Thinking about his parents. I kind of like this idea because I'm pretty sure this is totally true. At least it is with me. I have no memory. Never did. It's not just because I'm a drunk. And even when I was 18, my memory was just almost like the guy in Memento. But the more something is recalled, the more the brain has a chance to refine the original experience. Every memory is a recreation, not a playback. And we see one of the earliest things that Hana ever said to Asterios. It's just a matter of paying attention. It's just a matter of paying more attention. You just have to pay more attention. You just don't pay enough attention. Because every time Asterios remembers this moment, he changes it a little. It's almost like a telephone line, that game, you know? That's pretty impressive there. Love that. Another dream about Ignacio. And once again, Ignacio was like basically talking as if he has lived Asterios' life. And Asterios kills him with a tire. And then he wakes up in the hospital after that attack at the bar. He lost an eye permanently. And Asterios really gets interested in the solar car. And he says, hey, I really want to make this work. Let's make this our project. So with his brilliant mind, he just goes to the library, reads books on solar energy. And he basically spends weeks trying to make this car work. We see another kind act of Asterios. He saves this cat's life who runs into a tire well on a stoplight. And he makes the woman stop so he can rescue the kitty. So basically Stiff says, hey, if you can make that solar car work, it's all yours. It was just sitting here gathering rust. So Asterios decides to take off. He kind of needs to go on his own journey. And he says his goodbyes. And he's driving and driving. This is I wonder if this is like David Mazzucchelli's study of manga here. Because, I mean, just page after page of just like, nice little travel scenes, him stopping at rest stops. Doesn't progress the story at all. But does give a sense of how long he's traveling for, you know. Then in the middle of a snowstorm, his solar car conks out because, you know, there's no sun. And so he's in the middle of nowhere. But he's close to his destination, which we don't know until the end. And so he starts trudging through the snow. And finally he sees what he was hoping to see, his home. And he rings on the doorbell, and it's Hana. And she gives him some hot tea, puts a blanket around him. I guess that's why he went on his journey. He really just had to see Hana for some closure. He tells her about how he quit smoking. It really does seem like he's totally changed, you know. When he asks her how come she's still single, she says, I never met another jerk like you. And he smiles. So obviously, you know, there's still some affection between these two, even though she divorced him. I didn't even mention that. Sorry, guys. She divorced him. And that's where we were at the beginning of the story when his apartment catches fire. He was already divorced, you know. And it looks like she's working on new designs that are kind of based on Asterios' theories that he's always going on about. And they just have this nice night together. Catching up, drinking some wine. Oh, the poor cat died in the meantime, her cat that she loved so much. And they're reminiscing about good times in their relationship. She says, I hated you for a while. He says, Hana, there's so much I want to say to you. She says, it can wait. Let's just sit here for now. Okay. And the camera pulls back. And Hana says, this is nice. Okay, guys, get ready. And then Asterios says, what's that noise? I totally forgot the ending of this. Last night I was reading this, and I was like, get the fuck out of here. You can't end it like this. Remember what I was saying about callbacks and things referencing each other? So apparently, this is the night that the giant asteroid hits Earth. And it's aiming right for Hana's house. Just such a crazy way to end this, like, sensitive character study of this fascinating man and a woman. And just nuts. And then we have a little bit more. We see back at Stiff's household. They're all hanging out in the treehouse with a little running dog. And he says, look, a shooting star. And they say, make a wish. And we see this beautiful night sky. And that shooting star, of course, is going to demolish Asterios and Hana. Such a weird ending. That's just kooky as hell. So there you go, guys. Asterios Polyp. Sorry it took so long, but this is a fat graphic novel, as you can see. Look at that. It's quite a read. So I hope you guys enjoyed watching it, though. And I hope to see you next time here at the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies.